G'day Internet, welcome back to another video. So one of my other main hobbies, I suppose you could call it, is aside from the whole vintage computer thing, is vintage toys as well. And it's actually something I've always wanted to cover on the channel. I think I've done one toy related video which I think about 3 people have watched. And so this one I thought would be interesting because it's a bit of a crossover. So what I did was in 3D Builder, which is a free Windows app, I designed some tiny, roughly 1/6 scale handheld consoles. You can actually see them from where you're sitting, but they're really tiny. They're actually just here. So let's take a closer look at them, and I'll explain what I intend to do with them. So these are them. These are basically fresh off the printer, and as you can see, we have a Game Boy, we have a PC Engine GT because I needed a 4th one. That'll become relevant towards the end. We have an Atari Lynx Model 1, and we have a Sega Game Gear. Now, there's actually a reason why the Game Gear is white and not grey like the others. I did print a grey Game Gear, however, I went to start filming this video this morning and I can't find it, but I had already printed this one on a slightly different printer. It's a little rougher than the others, but it will certainly serve the purpose. So the first thing we have to do is this. The grey ones are actually silky smooth on the back because they were actually printed on a smooth bed printer. It's a new i3 Mark III Prusa, which we got at work, so they're silky smooth on the back. But like anything 3D printed, it's going to need some sanding because you always get some lines and some roughness to them. So we're going to start by giving them a light sand, but that isn't the first step in the prep work. We'll get to the second step in a minute. The back of this one is going to need sanding as well, and then obviously the front. So let's get going with some sanding. Now we've got the camera up there because this is going to be difficult enough as it is, let alone with a camera in my face. So, one quick tip. If you're doing anything really fine, can I highly recommend you get a set of these. I know they look really dicky, but for modelling, toy work and electronics, like really fine soldering, get yourself something like this. I just got this from JCar, and I find it really useful. Not to mention I don't have the world's greatest eyesight. So, if we start with this, I'm going to start with the back side of the Game Gear, and we're just simply going to rub it flat. Now, we're not going to get it absolutely perfect. The perfection, well, in theory, will happen in the second stage of prep. But the first bit I want to concentrate on is the back side of this Game Gear. Okay, so that's better than it was. Then now we're going to move on to sanding some of the finer detail on all 4 of these models. All right, again with our 800 grit paper, 80, God, I destroyed it. We just want to carefully work around the finer details. Now these models do have buttons that stand up and things like that, and so we don't want to lose the detail that is in the actual model. Ask me how I know. This is not the first attempt at these models. So if we kind of work our way round and concentrate, at least initially, on the flat surfaces that are easy to get to, these are going to take quite a bit of work. One quick little tip: if you take the edge of your sandpaper and run it down where you've got ridges, it's a good way of kind of cleaning up some of those areas. Be careful around the buttons. It's really easy to disform the buttons. We just want to try and get some of the roughness out of it. We're not going to get all of it. Now, one thing with this this particular Atari Lynx, if you look at it from the side, well, if you look at it from the side, like so, you will see that the screen frame and the 2 buttons on, well, on my left and the 3 on my right, are actually the very top layer. So to sand those down, we can actually do the same trick we did with the back of the Game Gear and sand them like this, because they will be the only bits touching the surface. And that's actually turned out pretty good. Another trick is if you've got an edge like I do here on my cutting mat, you can use it to get to things like the top of the D-pad on this. And if we're really careful, we can also do the 4 action buttons as well. Just very lightly though. Very lightly. Okay, now the main place you're going to find ridges is on the edges, on the sides, and that's because obviously this is printed like this and the printing happens up. So with these, on the very flat surfaces, like on the ends just here, we can do yet again that same trick. Good way to find out is run your fingernail across the edges and you'll feel if there's still anything big there. I'm going to need some more sandpaper. This edge I don't think is going to clean up without disforming the entire model, so we're just going to have to live with it. And with the other edges, like along here, you can kind of get to the corners using this method as well. If you kind of rotate it up and down as you sand. And that cleans that up. And I'll go for this corner. Now we've got some ugly bits along here, especially along the bottom edge where it was on the print bed. The only real option is to do it by hand and just be patient. Now that's still going to need a little bit of work, but I'm not going to bore you because I'm sure watching someone sand is probably even more boring than actually doing the sanding itself. So let me move on to, let me go on with sanding that and the other parts, and then we'll move on to the next step. So with them all sanded, the next thing we do is we're actually going to hit them with some spray putty. I use simply this that I got from just the local auto parts store. And it does the job. It doesn't really matter on the color because it's all going to get sanded back anyway. Now when you do spray with this stuff, you're going to spray it on, you're going to go, oh god, it's too thick and I'm going to lose all my detail. What I have found with this stuff at least is that it actually evaporates to a certain degree, so what you initially spray on is going to be a bit different to what the dry result is going to be. So let's get these ready for some spraying. So a handy way of mounting small things like this that I use, now I'm sure there's a million other ways, is I simply use some double-sided sticky tape on a fairly smooth bit of wood. This is just a bit of melamine offcut that I had in the garage. So obviously we want a piece of tape for each. That one didn't go down very flat, but it'll do. And then we simply take our models and stick them down. Don't worry about the backside just yet, we will get to that. It is also probably the least important aspect of these. So with them all stuck down, I'll now go out to the garage and hit them with just a single coat of the spray putty. Normally if I'm doing 3D printed stuff, I usually go 2 coats of spray putty. However, because there's such fine detail in this, I'm not going to risk losing that detail in the putty. So I'm just going to go a single coat and just live with however the texture turns out. So now that the spray putty is all dried, let's see how we went. We'll just take these off. So if we have a look, there's still noticeably 3D printed. The edges have turned out alright, but the front faces, especially on this one, still a bit rough, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do much about it without starting to lose detail. We might just have to live with it. So the next step is to now sand back the spray putty and see how they go, and then they'll be ready for actual painting. With them all now sanded, they're ready for paint. Now the paints I've chosen are pretty much just simply ones that I had on hand. For the Game Boy, I'm going to use Tamiya, and this is Insignia White AS20 if you're at all interested. For the Lynx, which is kind of a lightish grey, I'm using again another Tamiya AS10 Ocean Grey RAF, which is just here. For the Game Gear, which is a kind of a dark grey, well the bulk of it is, some of it's black, I'm using a just simply White Knight Gloss Medium Grey, which is this one here. The NEC, however, is a bit trickier because it's actually a really dark metallic kind of silver gunmetal grey. So that one's actually not going to get sprayed, that one's going to get hand painted, because I'm going to mix up some gloss black and some aluminium to make the colour for that one. So I'm now going to go off and spray paint those three, and we'll come back and I'll hand paint that and we'll start doing some of the detail. So now that they're all back from painting, we did have a slight change of plans with the paint I was going to use. For the Game Gear, I ended up using Tamiya AS10 Ocean Grey, and then Insignia White still for the Game Boy, and I ended up using Medium Sea Grey 2 AS32 for the Lynx. But you probably noticed that we still have one to paint, because I wasn't happy with any of the paints. Also, the Game Gear actually ended up being reprinted. I wasn't happy with it the first time round, so it's looking a lot better now. So we still need to take care of this guy here. So what we're going to do is do my usual trick of blue tacking him to a cotton bud. There we go, and let's get painting. And I'm using some Mr. Hobby Color H28, which is a metallic black, which is that guy there. All right, that's that bit done. The rest of it goes all different colors. So I will now grab an oversized clamp, and that guy can sit aside and dry for a while. Now, onto these three. We're now ready for some detailing. So I'm going to stick them back down on my random piece of wood just to make them a little easier to handle. Now remember, I haven't actually painted the back sides of these. That will actually be the very last step. Let's stick these down and we can get painting. So the colours on these are all fairly simple. On the Game Boy we've got red buttons, black D-pad and a light grey surround around the screen. The links is pretty much just all black buttons and a black trim around the screen. And on the Game Gear, we've got black buttons. This section around here is all black, and so is the edge around the screen. And we have one blue button. And that's kind of it. So let's start by doing all the black, because there's a lot of it. I'm going to be using no, wrong one. I'm going to use a Tamiya X18 semi-gloss. I don't want it too shiny. And it's at this point I bust out my magnifier, which is filthy dirty. And a very small brush. I'm going to be using, I don't know what the technical size of it is. No idea. But it's a very tiny brush. So we're going to start with the Game Gear. Now the hard part for the Game Gear is going to be getting in around the screen. So this is the main reason I grabbed such a tiny brush. Alright, that's the Game Gear, because it actually has a grey outline around the screen. Let's just put the links back where it should be and do this guy. Okay, so that's all our black done. Next bit I'm concerned about is I'm going to do the red buttons on the Game Boy. And for this I'm actually using some enamel, because I don't want it... actually no, I'm just going to go straight red. This is Tamiya X7, which is just red. Ooh, I don't have much left. It's probably because I knocked the whole bottle flying the other day. That's the red. Now we want some light grey for the outside of the screen. Now, I don't actually have any light grey, so we're going to have to make some. Grab a piece of paper so I can use to mix it on and shuffle some of my mess around. And being grey, obviously, we are going to mix white and black. And I'm going to use a, where is it? I'm going to use a flat white and the semi-gloss black again. We just want the tiniest bit of black in this white, I think. Want it, I think, about the same colour as the links, which is what I now have there. Switch back to the tiny brush and paint the outside of the Game Boy. Well, the outside of the screen at least. Whoop, don't move. Alright, with all the details there painted, let's just let it dry for a while. With them all dry, we're getting pretty close to the end. I have gone ahead and just added the detail to the NEC, so that's all done. Now you're probably wondering why I haven't painted in any screens. Well, I did some screenshots and we're going to use these. This is just printed on normal glossy photo paper. So what we're going to do is, assuming I can roughly line this up from the reversed side, I'm actually going to cheat a little and put some notches in so I know what I'm doing from the other side. And so I'm going to take some double-sided sticky tape and we're going to lay it down behind where the actual screenshots are. Trim that off. I'm just going to hold it up to the light to make sure I've got them all covered, and I do. So now we're going to cut them out. These are actually got little rounded corners, but just cutting them at 45 degrees is enough. Right, with them all done, I now need to find some tweezers. And now we get to the most annoying bit of the lot, and that's trying to separate the backing off the double-sided sticky tape. And then carefully take our console, and hopefully I've got the size right, and it should just drop in. I actually didn't need to round off the corners. And there we go. We now have 4 tiny little consoles with screens on them. That's actually kind of cool. So if you've reached this far in the video, I'm sure at some point you've started asking, why is he making tiny little handheld consoles? Well, there's actually a few reasons. The first one is I simply like making things for my toys. It's probably one of the big reasons I'm a supporter of Toy Ploy. The second thing is when I display all my toys, I kind of, and also if I do, the few times I do some toy photography, I like to have props. I like to be able to give the figure some kind of context. So, as an example of that, here we go. So I hope you enjoyed all of that, and I hope the photos that I did kind of can give you an idea of why I made these tiny little consoles. So if you like it, hit like and hit subscribe down the bottom. There'll also be a link to my Thingiverse, which will have the files for everything you need to make your own, and see you in the next video. Or you started asking yourself, hello Winston. Or you've started asking, do I have to shut the door? This is one of my 2 cute little dogs. Hello.